I'd first like to take the opportunity to congratulate Nintendo on what has undoubtedly been a successful launch of their latest system. Sales are strong, confidence is up, and stocks are rising. Things are looking good for the company, and after the Wii U, it's nice to see things take a 180. But with the positive stage set, I'd like to pose the question, how healthy are things really for the Switch owner? And when I say owner, whom exactly do I mean? Well, since I'm making this video, and I do happen to own a Switch, it would seem appropriate to have that bulk of the focus on me, where I can share how I currently feel about the platform and where I think it needs to improve. The thing is, I really like the Switch. The system is sleek, it offers a portability option that the nearest competitor lacks, and it already has some great games, some of which I'd argue are already up there with the best ever made. And I'm a Nintendo fan. I've been gaming on Nintendo systems on and off since the early 90s. The NES was the console that got me hooked. The N64 was the golden years with Super Mario 64, Ocarina and GoldenEye multiplayer sessions. I got the GameCube late, but Remake and Resident Evil 4 will forever have a place in my best of lists. So please don't misconstrue that what I'm saying or doing is being some hater who doesn't understand the reality of Nintendo's position in the industry. I fully understand that when Nintendo does what they do best, it's fucking magical. Best developers, best franchises, best games. Never quite the best systems, but they always have the potential to be so. What I want to talk about is the Switch as it is today and what it severely lacks. That is, third-party support. There would have been a time in the not-so-distant past that I would have said that Nintendo doesn't need third-party. In fact, I remember commenting to the effect that if the Wii U had a turnaround after the mass exodus of third-party companies in the third year of its life, that it would prove that a system can survive entirely on first-party offerings. Well, that hypothetical didn't exactly pan out, and that's not to say that the failure of the Wii U was entirely down to third-party support. We all know the reasons for that console's failures were multiple and varied, but we can at least agree that it certainly didn't help its cause. And so, we come to me, one of the, I guess you could say, privileged few who have managed to get a hold of a Switch. And if you can tell by my accent, the man down under, let's say, is high, but not quite as insane as in the States. But now as an owner, I find myself in a state of flux. I like what I have, but I still feel somewhat unfulfilled. What really got me thinking was when I came across this. It's a nice pic, and what seems like a pretty innocent tweet, and I responded in my own flippant way. In terms of a first-year lineup and comparing other systems, it's pretty damn good, but as I studied it, I found myself asking, what does this do for me? Allow me to demonstrate what I mean. Let's start off easy with the titles I have no interest in getting whatsoever. Okay. Now let's mark off the ones that I've already purchased and I've either completely finished and waiting for it to become relevant again with DLC, or playing it just casually to pass the time. Alright, now we move on to those, despite respecting what they're trying to offer and achieve, have not or are still yet to convince me to make a purchase. What if you're not exactly a huge fan of that particular genre, and that you would only play these type of games with another person in the room, and that scenario itself would rarely come up to justify the price tag? And finally, let's divide what's left based on levels of interest. And as you can see, while we still have some very nice things to look forward to, the picture is not quite so rosy when you take into account the dates involved. I would have to wait another month just to play my next game, and when you have currently nothing to play, those days and weeks start to feel really slow. So I've come to the realization that I no longer want to wait. That's why I've decided to take the plunge, and as of today, I will be a PS4 owner. I found a refurbished base unit for a decent price, and a couple of pre-owned games, and I'm set to go. Am I saying that I'm leaving Nintendo forever? Of course not, but until I have something that interests me to play on the system, my focus will be elsewhere. I had always intended to get the competition when enough time had passed and prices were down. I'd previously purchased a PS3 back in the day to play Uncharted 3. The game itself, in retrospect, probably didn't justify the purchase, but in the end, things evened out. I just didn't expect it to happen so soon here into the Switch's life. If you had asked me last week, I would have honestly told you that I saw myself getting a PlayStation in about a year or so's time. But here we are. And the thing is, I don't want to use terms like damage controlling or anything like that, but the prevailing response from a portion of the Nintendo community is, be patient, they're coming, give it a year, so on and so forth. Well, I'm done waiting. I had my Wii U, I got through the backlog of games, and so when the Switch came along, I was fired up and ready to go. I can see that a game release schedule is supposed to be a marathon and not a sprint, but I hit that wall pretty damn quickly, and it fucking sucks to realize you have nothing to play on your new console. Yes, there are games, certain types of games, and anyone with a brain knows that the best strategy is to stagger those releases over the coming months, and Nintendo has done a fairly decent job of that, but a lack of variety is bad in any part of the year. Overpriced Neo Geo titles and sporadic indie releases on the eShop are not going to fill that void. They're just not. Sure, it's better than nothing, but if these games don't elicit any interest, it essentially becomes nothing. Because you're not going to buy them, you're not going to play them, and you'll certainly resent the fact that this is all they have to offer you. That's how I feel today. It's sage advice to any gamer that they don't buy a Nintendo with third party in mind, because they'll be in store for some real disappointment. But there has to be a base limit to what we can accept going on without. I mean, Call of Duty, one of the biggest multi-platform franchises in the world, not getting a Switch version? Unacceptable. Embarrassing. We can all go on about how uninspired each entry is and there are much better shooters out there. Keep saying we don't need this or that, but what most of you are really saying is, I don't want that. Well, others do, and more importantly, the platform does. What we're talking about here is the big picture. Think of a restaurant that's open Monday, Wednesday and Friday in any given week. You know what the average customer takes from that? They think they're closed more than they're open. You're telling them that you're closed. It's about messaging. Nintendo is telling consumers they don't have games. The ones they do host have a particular look and appeal, but little to none of the others. And that other is the majority. You're missing out on tons of titles. This points to a lack of vibrancy of a platform, limited in the types of games and genres that a wide range of people are looking to play. You can argue that we're only a few months into this, but what about next month? What about next year? Do you honestly think that things will substantially improve without a nudge or two? And isn't it at least reasonable to ask that someone get a handle on this now, before it really becomes an issue? I don't expect every single game to be ported over to the Switch. I really don't. It wouldn't be capable if it tried. But I do expect the big ones, and the ones that make sense. Some Nintendo supporters have currently surrounded themselves with what I would describe as a Teflon bubble to the problems facing the Switch. Sure, the system is proving difficult to find on store shelves, and as long as it continues to sell well, any perceived problems can either be downplayed, mocked, or put aside for another day. But the thing about numbers is, they fluctuate, sometimes dramatically. A couple of slow months and that bubble will burst, and then you'll face the same problems you had, while your excuses will ring hollow and desperate. It's not going to go away, and in fact with each passing day, the problem will only become bigger, and that much harder to resolve. I've seen many comments about getting a second system, but they're worded in a way that leveling any blame on Nintendo would be the last thing on their minds. Don't worry about it, just get a PS4. When you say something like that, you're clearly stating where the problem lies. It's certainly not with Sony. They're providing the solution. Cards on the table, I'm getting a PS4 because Nintendo doesn't provide what I want. It's one thing to be enticed by the allure of exclusives. Microsoft has a few, Sony has many, and Nintendo is king in this department. But why is it that the Nintendo audience is just now expected to buy a whole extra system just to play the games that come as a standard package with the others?
All right, explain this to me like I'm a 2-year-old, okay? Because there's an element to this thing I just cannot get through my thick head.
It may not be by design, but it is by default because the only other choice you have results in you playing games you don't really like or deciding to play none at all. And no, I don't want to get a PC. I have no interest or time to care about PC, and I'm not going to start now. So let's talk about money and spending it. I've seen a fair share of posts over the years that ridicule the idea that people out there might have a little trouble affording another console. Let's be real here. These play boxes are luxury items. If someone has to put food on the table, keep the lights on, keep up to date with other bills, pay for medication, and take the family pet for a much needed checkup, you really think if they're responsible, mature adults, that they're going to have an entertainment device take precedence over that? These aren't exactly cheap items. There are reasonable price points in an established marketplace, but for many people, it's a special occasion, a once every 5 years gift, and every so often when they have that little extra money, they'll treat themselves to a game or two. An extra $300 lying around is pretty hard to come by, and would most likely be used in more important and practical ways. I can currently afford another console. It's not a premium one, but I got it. But I know there are some out there not quite as lucky as me. What would be ideal is if you treated yourself to a Switch and you would get to share in the many varied experiences that the other consoles offer. Honestly, the way things feel like they're headed from developer comments and Nintendo's general lack of focus on the matter, securing just a quarter of new support and building it up from there is a realistic goal that I think could be achieved in a very short period of time. YouTuber Super Metal Dave recently mentioned
the third-party problem for Nintendo has reached the absolute epitome of bad. This is the worst it's ever been, I think, in their history.
I have to concur with him. I've never witnessed a time where the releases were so lopsided in favour of first party, and frankly, that's depressing. When I think about the Switch being touted as a sign of Nintendo's comeback, it looks to be exhibiting some of the delayed effects of the failed Wii U generation. I know that I did all that I could when I was given the choice: Darkstalkers 2, Deus Ex, Assassin's Creed, Black Flag, Arkham City and Origins, Splinter Cell Blacklist, Most Wanted U, Rayman Origins, and even Watch Dogs from the bargain bin. I bought them all, I played them, and for the most part, I enjoyed them. Nothing would thrill me more than be able to play something like that on my Switch. The Switch needs games like that to thrive. As I said before, the portability factor is a big deal for me. The thought of playing any game on the go is fantastic. 9 times out of 10, I would happily forego a reasonable drop in visual clarity and performance for the sake of mobile functionality. This is something that is unique to Nintendo's platform, and its potential is currently being squandered. It's a given that third-party offerings, especially concerning Nintendo, are supposed to be supplementary experiences. If you go back to the picture, you could see how different it could be if the other titles were able to pick up the slack. I wouldn't just have time to waste until the next Mario, but time to invest with other characters and worlds to explore. I've heard it said, I want a unique experience from third-party efforts on my Switch. Something special, not some straight-up vanilla port. My response to that? This is a unique experience. This is a unique experience. Nintendo-made games are the unique experience. As fans, we know to go over here to get away, to change things up a bit. Third parties don't have to try so hard to sell that difference. We can already tell them a mile away, and it doesn't have to be complicated either. Most of us just ask the games we try aren't hobbled before the first step. Parody. Feature-rich, effort-driven parody. It ain't rocket science, yet it's the thing that keeps repeating itself. In my world, no browning points are given to any developers who, despite their stated hard work, still only manages to offer 70% of the total experience to the Nintendo audience. For that type of effort, you receive this, and any more unprecedented partnerships can suck my knob. Yes, with Nintendo and third party, there are corporate and business realities in place and industry politics to contend with. Nuances and complexities in any issue can muddy the waters, and the truth is usually somewhere in between. Whatever the third party causes are, I think most of us can agree that it shouldn't have to be like this. Ultimately, the buck stops with Nintendo. It's their platform. They own it. If anyone is going to address something, it's going to have to be them. From the Nintendo fan's point of view, from the gamer's perspective, for the vibrancy of the platform as a whole, something's gotta give. I want games. That's all this really comes down to. If you don't have what people are looking for, they'll go to someone who does. And these are the crossroads I find myself in. Again, I'm not abandoning Nintendo, but I won't settle with confinement either. So now, I also own a PS4. I can only really speak for myself and my experiences, but is it too much of a stretch to speculate that others who feel similarly might take that first step away and never look back? You could lose them forever, Nintendo, and that would be a real shame, an obvious and an avoidable shame. Don't let it get to that. You made a great product, now give us the games to go with it, as many as you can, anywhere you can find them. Now get to work. It's say the problem will be only day. The problem will only be. But I know there are some out there that are not as fortunate as me, But I know there are some out there that are not quite as fortunate as me. You fucker. Offer.